Afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. We are very excited to have some special guests here, and we will be decoding reading preparation. What the 2026 NTCQ report means for aspiring teachers and educator preparation. At the Pathways Alliance, we spend a great deal of time thinking about what it takes to build and sustain a strong educator workforce. And one thing we've learned through our work with partners is that student outcomes and educator preparation are deeply connected. We know that a student's ability to read proficiently shapes so much of their future success, but strong literacy outcomes don't begin when a teacher enters their own classroom. It really begins much earlier. And that really starts off with how that teacher is prepared. As conversations around literacy continues to evolve, this moment presents an important opportunity to not only think about what aspiring teachers are learning, but also how they are learning. Preparation is about more than just coursework alone. Clinical experiences, mentorship, and opportunities to practice. And also, that means giving the ability to have meaningful feedback all play an essential role in helping future educators to build confidence and readiness. At the same time, many communities across the country continue to face educator and workforce challenges. Those realities make it even more important to what we know and also how we think about teacher preparation quality and workforce sustainability together. When aspiring educators are well supported before they assume full responsibility for a classroom, everyone benefits: teachers, schools, and most importantly, students. Today's conversation is really about preparation and practice. It's an opportunity to reflect on where the field has made progress, where challenges remain, and also what we can learn from one another as we continue strengthening pathways into the profession. We're fortunate to be joined today by Ron Noble, Chief of Teacher Preparation at the National Council of Teacher Quality, and Christy Ellis, Managing Director of Teacher Preparation. Ron and Christy have spent considerable time examining trends in literacy preparation and working with states and educator preparation programs across the country to better understand how future teachers are being prepared to support student literacy outcomes. Thank you both for being here. To get us started, I'd love to provide some context from the latest work. Ron and Christy, can you briefly share what prompted this work and what questions you all were hoping to better understand through this latest analysis?
Sure. Thanks, Sabrina. We really appreciate the invitation to be with you all today. At the National Council on Teacher Quality, for many years, we've been producing a set of reports called the Teacher Prep Review, where we analyze teacher preparation programs across the country against a set of research-based standards. And one of the most popular sets of reports that we produce at NCTQ is the one we just released last week related to reading preparation. So what we're looking for when we conduct this analysis is the extent to which elementary teacher preparation programs across the country are aligned to scientifically based reading instruction. We know this is an area of super high interest for all of our different stakeholders, from our fellow advocates to state policymakers to education providers themselves, and even to teacher candidates who are trying to make a decision about where to enroll to become the next generation of teachers. And so this is always high interest for us. One of the things that's really exciting in this version of the report is that we are able to directly compare the results from 2023, just 3 years ago, because we use the same underlying standard. And so we have, for the first time, really interesting comparative data to see how the field has evolved and changed, as there's been so much discourse and dialogue and legislation and policy and funding and opportunities for teacher prep and K-12 to make sure that every student has access to teachers who are really well steeped in the right knowledge and skills to teach them to read. So that's sort of a little bit of background on why we're so excited to be talking about this report today with you.
Great, thank you. One thing that stood out to me is that it appears to be progress across the field. From your perspective, where are you all seeing encouragement, movement, or improvements?
Sure. If we take a peek at the next slide, we'll share sort of our high level. Oh, just one more, I think. We'll share a set of high level results. So when we evaluate programs, we use an A through F grading scale, and we look at an A meaning that the program is fully aligned to the five core components of scientifically based reading instruction. And an F really signals that the program is misaligned. Either they're failing to provide adequate instruction in all five of those areas, or they're teaching a high number of practices that we've deemed contrary practices, things that are not supported or have been debunked by reading research. The most common phrase you'll hear related to contrary practices is 3Qing, which a number of states have actually banned as a practice for K-12 instruction and for teacher prep in some cases. And so what we saw in this latest round of results that we find really encouraging is in just 3 years' time, the percentage of programs earning an A or an A plus jumped from 26%, so just around a quarter of the programs we reviewed, to over half, 53% of programs now meeting that benchmark of being fully aligned. And on the other end of the spectrum, in the F program group, we see a similar big drop in the percentage of programs that earned a failing grade in our analysis, moving from over a third 3 years ago, 35%, to just 1 in 5 now. So that's a big signal for us that there's been a lot of attention paid by programs and by states in terms of helping increase the amount of aligned instruction that aspiring teachers have access to these days. Kristen, let me pause and see if you want to add anything because I'm talking too much.
No, I do think one of the things that we are really happy to see is a reduction in the number of contrary practices that we saw across the board. Ron mentioned, for example, 3Qing systems, where in 2023, I think we saw that in around 9% of programs. That number has reduced to only around 3% of programs see that. That's really, really good news because things like 3Qing and explicitly naming balanced literacy in your syllabi are pretty strong signals that you're not aligned to scientifically based reading instruction. So when we're drastically seeing a reduction in those percentages, that's a good sign that programs are moving in the right direction.
Thank you. And we know just from, of course, hearing in the field and also seeing that preparation extends beyond coursework alone. Clinical experiences, mentorship, and opportunities to practice all are very important components of readiness. How do you think about those elements alongside the findings from your research?
Yeah, as you mentioned, practice opportunities are essential for candidates to develop the skills that they need and to build on what they know in coursework and to actually putting it into practice. We think candidates should be engaged in opportunities to practice, such as delivering lessons that are aligned to the core components or delivering things like an oral reading fluency assessment. This need is definitely known, but prep programs are currently not providing opportunities to practice the five components at the levels that we hope to see, with many prep programs not providing any practice opportunities at all. You can see here, for example, that 42% of programs provide no practice opportunities in fluency, instead of doing things like, as I mentioned, requiring candidates to do something like administer an oral reading fluency exam. We specifically look for practice opportunities that have the candidates acting as a teacher and teaching students or their peers in the place of students, whether it's through delivering a lesson or administering an assessment. We do allow programs to have simulated practice opportunities. So as I said, they're acting as a teacher and their peers are acting as students, because we understand that not every environment is going to have access to students at all times. But NCTQ also publishes something called the Clinical Practice Framework and Action Guide, as well as our forthcoming clinical practice standard, which dives into key areas of clinical practice experiences that were supported by researchers as well as people that we spoke to in the field. Importantly, we think it's critical that candidates have access to high quality, instructionally effective mentor teachers, and that they're provided frequent feedback throughout their clinical practice opportunities within settings that are well aligned to their future placement. Opportunities like this can help teachers have authentic experiences that make sure that they are ready to deliver effective instruction during their first year of teaching.
And with that instruction during their first year of teaching, and of course, feeling supported, we know, and you've kind of mentioned and alluded to the fact that, of course, today's classrooms are very diverse. They look very different across the board. What are you all seeing in the preparation of future educators, and I would even say current educators, to really support multilingual learners, struggling readers, and students that, of course, have varying learning needs?
So in 2023, we integrated a part 2 of our standard, which specifically looks at the needs of 3 special populations of students. The groups that we look at are English learners or multilingual learners, struggling readers, which can include students with dyslexia, and students who speak English language variations other than General American English. And that includes students who speak things like African American Vernacular English or Southern American English. Across the board, we've seen little movement in all 3 of these learner groups since 2023. This is unfortunate because almost every teacher is going to, as you mentioned, teach a class of diverse students with diverse needs. A majority of programs are providing fewer than 2 instructional hours to each of these learner groups, and a majority also provide no practice opportunities. So when we look at their materials, we're not seeing them spending enough time talking about how to differentiate your instruction to meet the needs of these various learner groups. But we're also not seeing them include specific content that we know will help these learner groups succeed. So for example, an English learner will benefit from their teacher knowing how to make connections between English and Spanish language structures. And a student of a speaker of a English language variation will benefit from a teacher who understands how to bridge home languages and school languages and sort of make the connections there and also bring a strengths-based mindset, asset-based mindset into how they teach these students how to read. So this is a big glaring gap here right now in the programs that we're seeing. Even in states where we know there are large populations, for example, of English learners, we're not seeing a clear connection between what those programs are actually providing to candidates and what the candidates will likely need within their first year. We hope that by providing additional voice to this need, we will see that additional support is provided in these areas. And we have been reached out to by a number of programs who are earning an A or an A+, trying to make sure that they put these special populations more into their program and see improvement.
I think, Chrissy, you just made a really important point around prep programs really trying to attend to the student populations that their candidates will emerge into the field and be responsible for educating. We haven't seen that at the state level when we look at English learners, for example. We don't see a real strong correlation between the amount of time teacher prep programs in a given state are dedicating to preparing candidates to meet the needs of ELs. And the density of the English learner student population in those states. And so we do think that's an area where even strong programs have room to grow and increase their focus on really tailoring their candidates' experiences to meet the needs of their future students. And we think, I think this is right in line with the Pathways Alliance's work. Like, we think that connection to practice and clinical experience and having those school-based opportunities to practice your skills while you're still enrolled in a teacher preparation program are essential for honing that skill set within an aspiring teacher to really understand what it means to teach the students that they'll ultimately have in their classrooms once they become a teacher of record.
And as you all talk about what you all are seeing across states, we for sure understand that there are some gaps there, but I would love to hear from both of you. What are you all seeing across institutions in various states as far as their approach to really strengthen literacy preparation? What are some promising practices or lessons that stood out to both of you?
Yeah, so we're super excited to say that over 200 programs earned an A or A plus on our standard this year, which means that they, as Ron mentioned earlier, they teach all 5 components of scientifically based reading instruction. And for those A plus programs, we also saw no mention of any of the contrary practices. This is good news. It means that at least on the document level, they're doing an excellent job attending to the 5 components of scientifically based reading instruction. We also wanted to dive more into these promising practices, as you mentioned, Sabrina. And so we created 5 case studies that dove more into the great work we've seen. Your slide today talks a little bit about Winston-Salem State University, who we talked to about the great work that they're doing, specifically because when we looked at their data, we saw that not only were they earning an A plus, but also that they were getting top marks for English learners. And so we wanted to have a conversation with them, like, how did you do this? What changes did you make and why did you? And it was partly because the state that they're in specifically had a framework that was developed that helped push them and the coursework that they created into a better state in terms of alignment to the 5 core components. But it was also because they were extremely committed to providing practice-based tutoring opportunities for every candidate in their program. And within those tutoring opportunities, they noticed that their candidates were teaching English learners and that their candidates weren't well prepared within those tutoring opportunities to deliver the type of instruction that those English learners needed, paired with looking at their assessment that their candidates had to take at the end of their program and seeing that that also attended to the needs of English learners. And so through that knowledge, they then went and revamped their courses and ensured that each one of their reading specific courses touched on the needs of English learners. And this has made a huge difference, both in the quality of the tutoring that's being provided, but also ensuring that each of those courses provides, comprehensive understanding of how to differentiate your instruction to meet the needs of English learners. We also highlighted, and you can go to the next slide, Dr. Ellen McIntyre, who's the current dean of the University of Tennessee, who has had an amazing career, and through being dean at 3 different universities, she's moved all 3 of them to earning an A plus on our standard. And her playbook was all about sort of confronting the long-held beliefs that both she herself and also the faculty that she worked with have about how to best teach reading, and helping push the school that she's working at towards an environment that fosters scientifically based reading instruction, while investing in faculty to making sure that those who maybe don't have that level of understanding are also well trained in it, and making smart decisions about where to place faculty who are highly trained. And so making sure that those faculty that are well aligned to scientifically based reading instruction are in the most high leverage courses. And she's ensuring that they teach the Foundations for Reading course at that university. And through all of those decisions, she's made, as I said earlier, 3 universities move to an A plus, which is just excellent work. Ron, do you have any other notes on what states might be doing?
Yeah, we highlight a couple of states that are sort of leading the way in terms of supporting their programs to align to the science of reading. We have a case study on Indiana. Indiana is an example of a state where they have a law that requires all teacher preparation programs that are responsible for producing elementary teachers, early childhood teachers, and special education teachers to be fully aligned to their state definition of the science of reading. And they paired the passage of that law with tremendous levels of support for programs to make the necessary changes, convening faculty together, issuing grants to revise coursework, providing technical assistance, and then ultimately paired that support with accountability. So any program found not in alignment with the science of reading has a very short timeline for improvement, or they run the risk of having their state accreditation revoked. And so that combination of real clear standards, strong support, and strong accountability seems to have moved the needle. Now we have a situation in Indiana where every program in the state earned an A or an A plus on our analysis this time around, which is just tremendous progress from where they were 3 years ago, or is much more representative of the national averages. Another example of a statewide play that looks a little bit different is unfolding in New York. We profiled the New York Path Forward initiative, which is a group of folks working in partnership with NYSED to support a cohort of New York teacher prep programs to revise their coursework. And so the play in New York started with a sort of a self-assessment, having the programs really reflect on their own knowledge of the science of reading and whether they were equipped to sort of take on this work on their own to improve their coursework. And then each program in the pilot has been partnered with a technical assistance provider who's working really deeply with their faculty to help them along. So while New York's data in our current report doesn't look very strong, we have reason to believe that the next time we're out there doing this work in 3 years' time, we're going to see a similar success story in New York.
Yeah, it seems from what you and Christy have mentioned that a lot of these programs have made significant progress. What were some of the common themes that you both were noticing among institutions that really have strengthened their approach over time?
I'll start, Christy, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like
Yeah.
low-hanging fruit for many programs is really looking closely at the textbooks and key core readings. This is very granular, I know, but it's important that that professors are assigning in their required reading courses. We can learn an awful lot about sort of a professor's ethos when it comes to reading instruction based on looking at the readings and texts that they're assigning in their courses. In fact, we did that analysis this time around for all of the programs that chose not to provide NCTQ with their course materials. We looked at the quality of the textbooks that were being used in these places, and we found that the non-participating programs are using misaligned textbooks at the same rates as our programs that earn Ds and Fs in our analysis, which suggests to us that there's a whole bunch of sort of misaligned practice that is hiding from our review. So I think one place we've seen positive change is we've seen movement in the texts assigned from texts that are grounded in a balanced literacy or 3Qing framework and moving towards texts and readings that are more aligned with the science of reading, or otherwise known as structured literacy. So I think we've seen big movement there. But Christy, I'd love to hear your take.
No, I think that that's a great starting point, because I think changing your textbook, it seems like a really simple or quick fix. And what effect would that have? It actually has a snowball effect on everything else that's happening in the course, because the lecture schedule that's then used in the course is more often than not really well aligned to what's in that textbook, right? And so the entire course is then changing its structure to be structured around that high quality textbook, which most likely, if we rank it high quality, has a section on phonemic awareness. It has a section on phonics, et cetera, et cetera. And so they've then essentially, by changing that textbook, had the impetus to transform the rest of their course. And if your lecture schedule is focused on the 5 components, then your assignments are likely going to be focused on what you focus on in your lecture schedule, right? So that's, it seems like a small change, but it actually can have a snowball effect, because when the professor knows what a well-aligned textbook looks like, it sort of says that they have a strong understanding of the types of content that their candidates are going to need throughout the course. And it has, pretty big ramifications for the rest of the things that those candidates are going to be spending time engaging in.
Great. Several examples that you both have shared really sounded like it involved a lot of like technical assistance and collaboration. What have you learned, or what can you share about the role of partnerships and external supports that can really play in helping programs navigate some of these changes?
I think that's such an important question, Sabrina. As a former deputy superintendent of a school district in Massachusetts, this resonates so much with me, right? Like, we need to rely on our teacher prep programs to produce candidates who have the knowledge and skills that we need to be able to put them right into action and have them make great impact with our kids. And when we have instances where a teacher prep program is teaching folks the wrong stuff or not enough of the right stuff, the burden fully shifts to the district to remediate that preparation. And it puts teachers in a really tough spot. I can't tell you how many teachers I've spoken to in my former district that literally would come in tears saying, why wasn't I taught this in my teacher prep program? These could be teachers with decades of experience who are having an awakening. And Christy can speak to this too. Like, we hear this story a lot from even prep program faculty who went through their own sort of awakening around the science of reading and truly understanding what scientifically based reading instruction should look like. That can all be prevented for new teachers if teacher prep is working in partnership with K-12 districts in terms of placing their candidates in schools that have embraced scientifically based reading instruction, and making sure that there's good synergy between what candidates are experiencing in their coursework and what they're being asked to do in their clinical experiences. I think there's no time like the present with now at this point, I think over 45 states have passed K-12 reading legislation that's really shifting what's happening in classrooms around teaching kids to read. Teacher prep needs to keep pace, and that can happen through strong partnerships between teacher prep and districts to really understand what is it that you need that we're not doing right or that we could do better, and making sure that there are those feedback loops. The other place that this comes into play for me is around instructional materials. We know a ton of states have done a lot of work trying to support their school districts to adopt strong early reading curricula, and the extent to which teacher prep programs can not only give teachers the foundational knowledge and skills they need about how to teach reading, but also start to help them understand what it means to implement skillfully a high quality reading curriculum. I think you've got even more opportunity for people to make impact on day one in the classroom. I think we have examples out there where teacher prep programs are attending to the specific high quality curricular materials that the districts they most frequently send their candidates to once they graduate, and making sure that knowledge building around that curricula can start to happen actually in prep, which is an amazing opportunity in partnership between prep programs and districts.
We have a specific case study in our clinical practice action guide, which we linked to earlier, related to Mount St. Joseph University, who has a long-running crown. They've been getting an A+ on our standard reading specific standard for many years. They're an excellent reading program. And the case study that we dove into them related to their clinical practice was all about what Ron's talking about, the intentional partnership that they needed to craft with their district, because one of the things that they were very ahead of the curve, right, on this move towards scientifically based reading instruction. And so when they were talking to districts, they noticed that where they were sending students maybe weren't as well aligned with scientifically based reading instruction as what Mount St. Joseph was at. And so throughout their partnership, and we dive more into that in the case study, they had to both push themselves and their partnership and the district towards that shared vision of what good reading instruction looks like. And they were able to do things like create shared goals, calibrate on a observation instrument that met the goals that both of them have, and get to a place where they could feel really good about where they're sending their candidates, and making sure that those were super clinically rich, well-aligned experiences for their candidates. They weren't getting mixed messages from one place. So highly recommend reading into that. They've been doing great work over at Mount St. Joseph for many years.
Thank you. I appreciate literally that emphasis on just feedback loops and alignment across systems. It really sounds like no one part of the ecosystem can do this work alone. And I think that's definitely something we've been trying to emphasize at Pathways Alliance, is that really it does take some collaboration and partnerships in order to successfully do this work. And I would love to hear from you both, looking ahead, what gives you each some optimism about where education and educator preparation is headed?
Well, this is related to our last question, but my favorite conversation I've had this year was with someone, and I don't want to name the state or the exact person, but essentially they've created like an ad hoc group of teacher prep program leaders where they've pushed each other to create this like level of quality in terms of scientifically based reading instruction. And she spoke to me a lot about how when new faculty come on board or a new dean comes on, they then bring them into this circle, this group, and set the standard together. And this has been a completely like not state-led group of faculty that's been going on, I think she said like 6 or 7 years, and every single program in that state is earning an A or an A+ on our standard. And I think that to me speaks to the level of commitment folks in the field can have about this work, that they are really committed to making high quality improvements and also raising the bar for their colleagues as well. And we've seen this in other places, but I just love that. I loved speaking to her specifically because it was an amazing story of folks just sort of bringing the level of quality that they were expected to have up together through partnership and through people that they're technically in competition with, right? These were all teacher prep program leaders bringing, like, raising the bar together. I also had a lot of conversations with A or A plus earning programs who wanted to get like the best possible score. And that to me, again, shows that the folks who are doing this work really want to raise the bar of quality. They want to be the best possible program that they can possibly be. And it is starting to become more than half of programs are now earning an A on our standard. So that speaks to me that the norm is going to be soon getting an A on our standard and doing an excellent job. And I think that that's great news. Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, just to echo what Christy shared, I think we have a bunch of examples of places that even just 3 years ago were pretty entrenched in contrary practices or really had designed their programs around debunked methods. And here we are sitting 3 years later, and they've made major changes to the way that they're teaching teacher candidates to teach reading. And that's encouraging to me, whether that's intrinsically motivated from the program leadership or whether it's a response to external pressure from state regulatory changes or legislative changes, or even in some cases, the really strong advocate community that exists in many states around supporting implementation of the science of reading, both in K-12 and teacher prep. I think all of these forces are coalescing and really making it, to Christy's point, like we're not too far away from the norm being folks earning an A or an A plus on our standard, which again just signals that they're fully aligned to the science of reading.
And my final question for you all, before we turn it to any audience questions or any like final thoughts that you may have. If we were having this conversation 3 years from now, what progress would you have hoped to report on?
For me, it's definitely part 2 of our standard attention to the needs of diverse learners. I think it was pretty disheartening for us when we looked at our comparative results between 2023 and 2026 and didn't see much movement in that area. We hope that with additional, advocacy and pushes that this becomes the thing that programs focus on, especially those programs that are right now earning an A or A plus, but aren't getting highest marks in the special populations areas. I think that there's a lot of room for growth there. And my greatest hope is that when we publish this report in 3 years, that we can see the same amount of growth that we saw in the number of A's, right? Like it was doubled from 2023 in the number of A's. I hope we can see the exact same amount of progress for the needs of diverse learners.
I agree with Christy. That's my top hope as well. I'll also add that I think there are several states that are in focus for us as in need of like tremendous support to raise the bar. While we see this tremendous growth in the national data, that's driven by a whole bunch of states that have done the work of that sort of equation that I laid out earlier, which is like having high standards for teacher prep, providing support, and holding them accountable. There are a handful of states where the progress doesn't look anything like what we see in the national data. And so we really want to see leaders and advocates in those states make positive change so that they can join the rest of their fellow states and more regularly and consistently provide students with access to scientifically based reading instruction. So I'm also going to have a handful of states in focus for this time as well.
Thank you, Ron and Christy, for sharing those reflections. One thing that we know from the Pathways Alliance work is that the quality of preparation and workforce sustainability are very deeply connected. And as districts and states continue to, face certain challenges around education shortages, we have an opportunity to really think about not only how we recruit future educators, but how we prepare them and support them before they assume for responsibility for the classroom. Strong preparation is not just about what happens in the coursework, as we mentioned, and clearly through your examples, it's really about what happens in practice. And we're seeing constantly that aspiring educators are really benefiting from opportunities to learn alongside other experienced educators, to receive feedback, to gradually build confidence in an authentic classroom setting. And this is really why the growing interest in these models, such as teacher residencies, teacher apprenticeships, and various grow your own pathways, are really kind of hitting the ground running right now. And while these models, of course, may look different across states and districts, what we found is that they really share several common elements to ensure quality. And that's really providing educators and aspiring educators with the support and also the experience that they need to be successful. We are intentionally pairing candidates with mentor teachers or journey workers. We're creating opportunities for embedded coaching and also ongoing feedback. And then also, we are really helping make that preparation more financially accessible while strengthening readiness and long-term retention. We've also learned in this space that, of course, as I mentioned before, no one single organization can do this work alone. Strong systems really require alignment between prep programs, districts, states, and also some workforce partners as well. They require those meaningful relationships and also those clear connections between like theory and practice. And also what we have known for many, many moons is that those support structures really continue just beyond that coursework alone. And ultimately, preparing educators is a shared responsibility. When districts, EPPs, and workforce partners and states really come together, we really create a pathway that really helps aspiring teachers enter the profession feeling prepared, supported, and positioned for long-term success. And before we move into Q&A, Ron, Christy, any final thoughts that you all would like to share with our audience today about the report or about anything that you guys would like them to take away outside of the data?
I just want to echo what you just said, Sabrina. We care a lot about the clinical experiences and the access to like true, authentic practice opportunities that programs can provide. Teacher prep, we're super excited about the proliferation of high quality teacher apprenticeship and residency programs. They offer new opportunities for candidates who might otherwise not have access to traditional teacher prep. And we love the point of emphasis that you just made, which all of these experiences that folks have during an apprenticeship model or in a residency program are happening before those folks are the teacher of record. And that's super important to us. Christy and I authored a brief last summer on alternative certification programs and really try to highlight programs that were doing the hard work of providing those true, authentic clinical experiences before someone's assigned as a teacher of record. We're very concerned about the proliferation of models that immediately assign someone as a teacher of record before they have any access to coursework, let alone the robust coursework and practice opportunities needed to really develop that skill set on how to teach kids to read. So just want to echo, like, high quality alternative pathways are absolutely essential to the marketplace and need to be built with the mindset of developing the knowledge and skill base around scientifically based reading instruction before someone becomes responsible for 30 students in front of them.
I think that's exactly right. I was going to mention the same brief, and I do think within that brief, we noticed that strong apprenticeship programs are some of the leaders in the areas that we were looking at in terms of the high quality indicators of a clinical experience. I'll also shout out that we are, currently looking into clinical practice right now with our forthcoming clinical practice standard being released in the next year or so, talking more about sort of how other teacher prep programs are working in this area. And so that's more broadly looking at clinical practice as a whole, rather than what we looked at within this standard, which was just specific reading opportunities that were connected to reading specific courses. As Ron mentioned, like these are extremely important. They're highly, highly critical opportunities for candidates to get the access that they need to opportunities that will help them make, smart decisions when they're in a classroom with students as the teacher of record. And so we hope, again, to see in the next iteration of the Reading Foundation Standard that we see little instances of no practice opportunities popping up. Unfortunately, that is one of the, darker sides of our standard, is that we're seeing a lot of places not attending to practice opportunities. So the richer the opportunities are, the better the program, I think, ultimately prepares candidates to be effective teachers.
Thank you. I truly appreciate the hopeful message that really emerged from today's conversation. While there is certainly more work ahead, it sounds like we've heard examples that you all have mentioned about institutions, states, and partners really making meaningful progress and demonstrating that the change is possible when support, collaboration, and commitment to continuous improvement really comes together. To everyone who joined us today, thank you for spending the afternoon with us. We hope that you leave with new ideas, new questions, and perhaps some renewed energy around the important work happening within your own organization and communities. And also, we encourage you to explore the 2026 Teacher Prep Review and to continue to engage with resources from both NCTQ and the Pathways Alliance. We do hope that you also follow us on our socials. Please do follow us on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, and X for any updated resources or also to be able to watch this recorded webinar. This webinar will be recorded. It will also be shared and it will also be posted on our Pathways Alliance YouTube and in our video library in case you want to go back to it or share it with your other colleagues. Thank you again, Ron and Christy. Thank you for joining us. We hope to continue these conversations together in the future, and we hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon.